still haven't gotten them online, but we're going to do that. So, Temple Beth Am Siddur class, and it is the 17th of Tevei, January 14th, 2020. And we're talking about, we've been in Birchot Pesukei de Zimra, and we really beat a horse to death with Baruch Shamar. We did a lot of it. Rabbi Avi, have a good day. And so I think what we're going to do now is let's take an overview of the structure of Pesukei de Zimra, and then I think we'll only do some highlights from Pesukei de Zimra. I don't think we're going to go through everything because that will take us a year. Okay? So, again, second section of the davening, Pesukei de Zimra, Psalms of Praise, or Hymns of Praise, page 16 through 29 in the Siddur Sim Shalom. So, we opened with the opening, Baruch Shamar, which we talked about at length. We close it, which has a bracha as the second half of the page. We close it with a bracha, Yishtabach, okay? And the fact that the opening bracha and the closing bracha talks about the same themes, which is praise, is sort of an indicator to us that this is one section, right? It's an envelope, right? It's a little bit, you can think of it like Hallel, or like the first bracha of Birkat Hamazon, benching, right? So it opens with a bracha and it closes with a bracha, and the opening and the closing are on the same theme, and that cues you into the idea that this is all one section, okay? And let's look at, we usually say this is Psalms from the book of Psalms, but of course it's not only that. So it's actually got a complex structure, which I think accreted, grew over time. So I don't believe that this was structured in an a priori organized fashion all at once. That's not what the history of the Siddur seems to suggest. So we have a few different types of things in here. We have Psalms, right? Okay, so we do have Psalms. And in particular, we have this group of the last 5 Psalms in the book of or is it 6 Psalms? I guess it's 6 Psalms. Psalm 145 to 150. That's 6, right? 145, 150, 170, that's 6 Psalms from Ashrei through the musical Hallelujah, right? So page 21 through the next to last paragraph of page 25, that's the Psalms. So we think of that as the core of Pesukei de Zimra, but that's not the only thing that's here, correct? Okay, so let's look at what other kinds of compositions we have. So first of all, on page 17, 18, and 19, we think of all this as one prayer, Hodu. Okay, everyone with me? 17, 18, 19, Hodu. It's one prayer, although the Chazan stopped several times during it to pace us. And even Hodu is composed of 2 different parts. So the first part is a quote from the Bible about how God is great and God did everything for us. This is from Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim. And it ends on page 18, where it goes on to say an anthology of verses from Psalms. Everyone see that? And basically, this is a long passage in Psalms of a prayer about how wonderful God is and the wonderful things God did for us. And actually, if you look in Chronicles, go home and look it up, it actually continues. So the Siddur stops it in the middle of the prayer in Psalms, all right, for reasons that are not entirely clear. So that, page 17 and most of 18, is just a quote of this prayer by King David from Chronicles. I should look it up. I'm pretty sure it is King David, but I'm going to look it up for next week. Then, if you look at the bottom of 18 and 19, it says an anthology of verses from Psalms. And this is just a collection of lines, one at a time, from all different places in the book of Psalms. So someone has made a collection of verses from Psalms into a prayer. So the prayer, or the second half of Hodu, is composed of just a collection of verses. And, I could back you against the wall and say to you, what's the order of these verses and why these ones and why is one connected to the other? And we might be able to come up with reasons for it. But this is actually a relatively early form of prayer. So if you look at like early Siddurim, if you look at Gaonic literature, post-Talmud period, there are many prayers that are just a collection of verses, meaning a person didn't compose new words from scratch, but rather they took one-line quotes from the Bible, usually from Psalms, and they put them together, and that made a prayer. Everyone follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Right? It's a prayer made up of, someone said, I am going to collect verses one after another, then try to put them in an order, and I think they're linked thematically, and that's a prayer. It's not an original. Can anyone think of another prayer like that in our yearly liturgy? That's really just a collection of verses. I don't want to say just, right? That is a collection of verses one after another. In hollow, well, that's really paragraphs, right? Just one line from here, one line from there. So Slichot, if you look at the Slichot prayers, the opening of Slichot after Ashrei, we basically have, Slichot that we say before Rosh Hashanah, right? After Ashrei and Kaddish, then you basically have 2 or 3 pages, which is just a series of one verses after another, right? If you look at Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot, right, in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah there and Yom Kippur, there is some order, there is some structure and order to those, but that's a collection of verses. In other words, someone said, I am going to compose a prayer, I'm going to put it in quotes, by taking lines from different places in the Bible, and I'm going to put them together one after another, and I'm going to call that a prayer. Okay, rather than someone sat down, rather than someone either, there are 2 other alternatives. One is to take a whole chapter, which is what all of the Psalms are, right? In the middle of Pesukei Zimra. Or I'm going to compose something from scratch, like, for example, the brachot after Baruch Hu, right? Yotzer or Uvarech Hoshech, that is a prayer that someone composed de novo. They quote a couple of lines from the Bible, but it's an original composition. So there are 2 other alternatives. It could be either a whole chapter, which we're going to recite, like a psalm. It could be, I'm going to create a new prayer. And this is a third alternative, which is, I'm going to create a prayer by taking one line from here, one line from there, one line from there. They're not consecutive, and I'm going to call it a unit or a prayer. And in fact, we know that very many early prayers were simply quoting lines from the Bible one after another. Michael?
Another example.
And then Meyer.
All the lines that are said at the beginning of Torah service on Simchat Torah.
Yes, exactly. Right? There are different lines from different Ataharet al right? The ones where we give out the pasuk to each verse to different people in the congregation, both at night and in the morning. And again, that's just a series of verses that some author took from here, from there, put them all together. And I'm telling you, you can look at those and you can say, well, I guess I can see why this is the order, or maybe not. Okay, sometimes it's hard for us to decide why these verses. Meyer?
I was just going to confirm for you that this Hodul Hashem wasn't indeed a Psalm of Thanksgiving composed by King David.
Yeah.
To celebrate the moment when the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Yerushalayim.
Great, thank you. I didn't want to look it up on my phone right now because I'm recording, and I was worried that if I pressed the button and looked it up that it would stop recording. But so thank you for doing that. So, okay, right? So Psalm of King David, and it goes on afterwards. It goes on with all the great things you did for us in history, and maybe the reason that it's cut off and we don't have that part in the Siddur is because later on in Pesukei Zimra, we're going to read other passages about the great things that God did for us in history. Okay? So I'm going to call it Unit 1 of Pesukei Zimra. Unit 1A is David's prayer from Chronicles, cut off in the middle. And when I'm calling Unit 1, I'm calling Hodu, okay, which is page 17, 18, 19. So Unit 1A is David's prayer from Chronicles when the ark was brought to Yerushalayim, cut in half, cut in the middle of it. Unit 1B is a series of verses from Tehillim, that we could spend a long time talking about why these verses and what's the order. Okay? And then we go on, then we have Mizmor LeTodah on page 20, which is a psalm for Thanksgiving, which is said to be the psalm that people would recite when they brought a Thanksgiving offering to the temple. And we stand for that psalm. We don't stand for the other psalms, but we stand for this psalm. We can just pose the question why, and I'll leave it hanging for the moment. And then you have Yehi Chvod Hashem L'Olam, the bottom of page 20, which is another, what? It is a collection of verses. Okay? It is again, I don't want to call it just a miscellany, because a miscellany makes it sound like it's random. So I don't want to make it sound like it's random, because someone actually presumably composed it. Okay? So we have another collection of verses. So we have a second collection of verses. Right? We had Unit 1B was a collection of verses. Now Yehi Chavod is another collection of verses. Everyone with me? Then we settle down into our final 6 Psalms of the Book of Psalms, which we always think of as the core of Pesukei de Zimra, right? We always think to ourselves, if I just sort of, shook you awake and I said, what do we say in Pesukei de Zimra? Shook you awake at 3 a.m. You'd probably say the Psalms, right? So we think of this as the core, but I just want to point out it is in the middle, but it's not the only thing that's in Pesukei de Zimra. That's why I'm going through this whole exercise of the overview and looking through it. Okay? So we have the final 6 Psalms. So we want to say, we want to do the Psalms, and these are, by the way, the final 6, which are all Hallelujah Psalms. We have an illusion that Hallelujah is all over the Book of Psalms. I think it doesn't actually appear possibly until Psalm 103 or 104 out of 150. So it is not true that all the Psalms have Hallelujahs. We have in our Siddur the Hallelujah block. So if you didn't sit down to read the whole Book of Psalms, you would think that all the Psalms start and end with Hallelujah, but they don't. This is like the Hallelujah chorus here. And, it's a way of saying we're going all the way to the Book of through the Book of Psalms, by all the way through Psalm 150, the final one. Yeah, Meyer?
I also remember, I think someone in Gemara says the reason that we say Ashrei is for
2 minutes, 3 minutes, yeah,
is so we can say the verse that being the center of it.
Yeah, in the Talmud from Daf Yomi a few days ago in Brachot, it actually says it's a good thing. Well, it doesn't say it's a good thing. It says you say Ashrei 3 times a day, you are surely going to go to the world to come. And what are the 3 times a day? We fulfill that dictum, Vidaven, regularly. What are the 3 Ashreis a day?
Well,
twice in the morning, right? Once now, once after the Amida, and at Mincha, opening Mincha. So that's 3 times a day. And then the Gemara asks, why?
Right.
I'm like, why this prayer, if you say it 3 times a day, you go to Olam Haba as opposed to some other psalm? What's special about this psalm? So there are 2 different answers. One is because it's the Aleph Bet. It's like we're praising God from A through Z. Okay? To which the response is, well, but there are other psalms that are alphabetical. So then the other answer is because we say Poteach et Yadecha, right? God is merciful to all. To which the response is, well, there are other verses that say God is merciful to all and feeds all. And then the answer is because it is both A through Z and has Poteach et Yadecha, God is merciful and feeds all, right? So that's why this is kind of the quote-unquote highest psalm, and that's why this is the one that if you say it 3 times a day, surely you are assured of going to the world to come. Okay, so we have the Psalms, and then we have another section after the Psalms, and I'm going to say, well, okay, so first of all, Baruch Hashem la'olam, amen v'amen, at the bottom of page 25. That is kind of a coda for the Psalms because it includes verses that close other sections of the Psalms. I'm just going to say that. So all these verses are from the Psalms. So that's kind of after we did Psalm 150, this is like kind of, the capstone, right, of the Psalms. Let's just call it something like that. And then what do we have on page 26, 27, 26 and 20, 26, 27, 28. We have the story of, we have various passages from the Bible which are about, what are they about? Not a trick question.
Later, you mean?
26, 27, and 28. We have passages from the Bible. What are these passages? If I said, what groups them all together? Exodus. It's about the great things that God has done for us, the Jewish people. The main great thing being Yitziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus. So we have a prayer from Divrei Hayamim, also by David. And then we have a prayer from Nehemiah. And then we have quoting the passage, and the passage from Nehemiah talks about the great things God did for us, specifically what's the biggest, greatest thing? The Exodus from Egypt. So then while we're doing that, we do, page 27, 28, passages from Sefer Shemot, from Exodus, which actually talks about the Exodus from Egypt and the crossing of Yam Suf, which we're also supposed to say every day. We're supposed to talk about the Exodus and the crossing of the Red Sea every day. So here's where we do it. Okay? So, in Pesukei de Zimra, I'm going to summarize, and we'll start next time with this also, and then we'll look at a few specific parts. We have some things which are collections of verses strung together in a prayer. We have some units which are a quote of a whole section from the Bible, like from Nehemiah or from Chronicles. We have actual whole Psalms, okay? And then we have, I'm going to call it, the historical story of our people, which is about Exodus, right? So we actually have, so Pesukei de Zimra isn't just Psalms. We actually have a number of different things that have, again, I think, accreted over time. I think when people davened in the year 200, let's say, in the time of the Mishnah, they did not say all of Pesukei de Zimra in the form in which we have it. These are units that came in at different times and came to be seen as one section of the Siddur. But the reason I went through this today is I want you to see how many disparate kinds of pieces there are in this one section. So we end up saying it's a unity. It's the preface to Shacharit, but the unity actually has many different pieces in it that came together at different times and in different ways. And somehow or other, they've all been put together. As we go through them, we'll sort of talk about, is there some sense to the order of this? Okay? I think I'm going to hold questions because we're running over. If you have questions, please bring up at the beginning next time. God willing, see you next week. Okay. Thank you. Bruchim to you. Everyone have a good day.